there was the games industry was craving for like a cultural kind of acceptance, right? Wanting to be recognized as a serious thing. And so the idea we could have linear, and also like PlayStation were positioning the games console from, instead of the child's bedroom, under the TV, post-clubbing experience, games became a more serious business in a lot of ways. And I guess the possibility of having orchestral music, or even indeed real-sounding music, could obviously make them seem quite a lot more grown up. Have you got any thoughts on that?
No, I was going to say it's quite interesting, that evolution, because it's as if the sound and the music sort of goes hand in hand with the visuals, in the sense that back then, I mean, that example that you played, the music was very distinctive. I wouldn't say it was worse than anything that's come after. It's just, it's very easily identifiable as games music. And, it still has value, obviously, and you didn't say it didn't, but there's been, aesthetically, I suppose, there's been a sort of shift towards trying to sort of create realistic worlds, realistic looking environments. And I think that's probably sort of gone hand in hand with the desire to sort of, as you said, use realistic instruments, I mean, the question of whether it's like other forms, film music and that sort of thing is separate, but this issue of realism, I think, is quite interesting, because those worlds weren't realistic, and they're very sort of cartoony, and the music was as well. So aesthetically, it matched. They went together very well, and it was uniquely game music. You hear that, you can tell it's game music. You wouldn't mix it up with anything else, really, would you? But I think a lot of music that we have now, just because it's evolved in the way you said, and it's pre-recorded, sort of baked music, doesn't necessarily in itself make it better, I suppose. It's worth sort of trying to see the bigger picture in terms of values change.
Yeah, because there's obviously a value to do with aesthetics, but there's also a value to do with function. And I'm just very curious about that comment of that time, that games were looked on like very much second fiddle to. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. I mean, I think since the clip we showed and the things that James mentioned, one thing I'd just like to add to what James said is about emotion. Yeah. It's very difficult to get emotion from the Ultima Online clip, because your emotional responses that you get from that is so limited. So as the graphics came along and so did the music, then of course all the game designers and directors wanted to get not only the sense of realism that James mentioned, but also this kind of emotional connection with the game. So I think in those days the games were still way looked down on by Hollywood. So I think, when I did Headhunter, I just did it in a way that is, the standard way of making a really high quality orchestral recording. It wasn't anything particularly that I'd invented or anything, and don't want to take any credit for that. It's just, this is how you do it properly. This is what it's all about. So that made Hollywood sit up and take notice of what's happening in games at that time.
Do you want to come in on that?
Just going to add to that, it was a time when people were beginning to equate games music or games with films as well. True. And, some of that emotional content that you were talking about, I think a lot of that has been derived from what we understand about film and storytelling. And that was starting to, a lot of cutscenes, linear sequences coming into games. And they played out like little episodes, little films in themselves. So the games industry started to draw on that language, the language of cinema, and import it into the games industry. It sort of went hand in hand with that. So the developer of this game was very sort of open to, it's a political simulation strategy game. You had to sort of try and rise to power in this fictional East European state. And they gave me there was a lot of scope for coming up with an interactive system and sort of hooking the music into the game design and picking out various variables from the game to motivate the changes in the music. It could be day and night, different environments, different actions that you could take, the state of your campaign. So really the challenge was just sort of trying to sort of, it was an orchestral score as well. I mean, there's a recorded live orchestra for it, so all that had to be dissected and played back by this system, and it was segmentalized and layered. And I can remember that there wasn't really any sort of vocabulary for that at the time. It was all sort of, we talk about stemming and things like that now, but I mean, that's what it was. It was a sort of a fairly early example of...
There wasn't a book written about it then?
There wasn't, no, there was no book written about it then.
Okay.
Well, number one, I'm very impressed by what James did, because people don't get it maybe, but to have that in 2001, it's like going to the moon in 1925. You see what I mean? It's like he was so much ahead of his time, and still now, as he's saying, few games are doing such work. What I'm interested in is rather what James just said about music. It's the meaning. I think it's. I've been going a lot to GDC, giving a lot of talk around the world, and I've been advocating a lot about interactive music, thinking that people would understand what is interactive music, but I believe that it's a very broad word, and it's very difficult to explain what is interactive music, because you might think that this is interactive music as well as what we've seen is interactive music. As long as the music is following the action, it's interactive music. So what makes a good interactive music and a bad interactive music, if I may say? And it starts with meaning. And that's, as a composer, I think as composers in the room, we all want to put something into our music. This is what we want to make, to create something that has a purpose, a meaning. Either you want to justify everything or just a tiny bit. Still, you have something to say within the music. So this is where James got some, let's say, ears to his will for interactive music for this game. He said the meaning, what he wanted to put in the music would match the game, the meaning of the music. It's very important, and it's overlooked by most games nowadays.
Big AAA games now are costing, gazillions, right? And talking about teams of 200-300 people on some of these games spread around the world, do you think with the amount of money involved in those kind of productions that game developers are more likely or less likely to try new things with music?
That's a really tough question.
Well, no.
No, I don't think so either.
So
No,
what they're going to play?
they don't want to risk anything.
It's business,
Right.
However,
like Hollywood, essentially.
but however, what is true for Hollywood is not for games. They don't want to take the risk, but there is a door that if you're, let's say, patient enough, and if you talk to them with the right words, explaining to them what it may do on the actual game, they will listen.
Yeah, there are exceptions, and the indie sector, obviously, innovative, different, new approaches are more welcome in that context. But you talked about these sort of big, AAA sort of Hollywoodish games. Yeah, there are exceptions, of course. It's really sort of whether the composer has an opportunity to, whether there's a dialogue with the designer of the game.
Yeah.
I mean, there is this kind of model that exists in the games industry, the sort of traditional games industry that sort of evolved, where the composer will deal with an audio director, and they're great people, but sometimes it is difficult to actually talk directly with the people who are designing the game. And if you want the music to be integral to the experience and have that kind of meaning, meaning embedded in it that means something in the context of the whole thing, you have to have that dialogue with the designer.
You don't have to do something very, complicated with interactive music, as long as it matches what the meaning you want to put with the music, connected with the game. That's maybe, very, very sophisticated, because this game is crazy, and they were crazy to write this game and to produce this game and to release this game. But, I'm very happy because, thanks to them, I can, show people, and you can experience something that I believe might be one path of interactive music, meaning that it's not about writing one piece of music, but letting the game become the speaker. You know what I mean? Nowadays, the tools are very much easier.
Right.
And friendly user like WWise, Fmod, you can do amazing stuff very easily. And that's very important, because now creativity is not stuck by somebody that in the team doesn't want you to, to do your stuff, whatever, it's a programmer, audio director, you have the technology on your own at home if you want to.
Yeah.
So it's very important to note that there is no more limitation, let's say. There is still, because we want to push, okay? But for a lot of people, it's way beyond what they would dream, okay, to get as a tool. Now, as an approach, like how do you approach music for games? So,
can I just ask you something? Am I right in saying that, before you get onto the approach, that just on the technology, that the MIDI flexibility I spoke about earlier on, there's now no reason not to modulate digital content, and B, to have MIDI-driven content along with it, in sync with it, that sounds amazing also. So
it's
you
there.
have complete flexibility, right?
It's there, and the sooner, we're going to have a lot of people using libraries. We're going to have them in real time in games, maybe not the next generation, but, so it's going to come up to be everything in real time, maybe, for people that like to do things with samples or electronic music. Now, live orchestra still, hopefully will prevail for some, or not even live orchestra. I mean, we've been showcasing a lot of orchestral stuff, but music for games is broader than this. Okay, it's not orchestral music that is better than anything else. So concerning the meaning and the fact that the composer himself or herself, should be a gamer, it's a plus. That's for sure. That's for sure. But you don't have to be a gamer, like to play all the game. You need to play the game you're scoring. Yeah. That's what's important, because you need to understand what's there, as much as they need to understand what you're doing. So it's about the relationship. Yeah. And this is where it all starts to me. This is where it's difficult in the AAA worlds, because the creative director, if you can talk to him like once a month, you're lucky, as a composer. It's very difficult to get, to this person. So that's number one. But number two, you as a composer, you need to be sort of proactive for the game. And that's where people, I think, don't understand maybe, or I'm not explicit enough, but interactive music is not about, oh, you follow the action, oh, there is a monster, let's put some monster music, or do we do the opposite, or whatever, like being like dynamically synchronized with anything in the game. That's not what it means to be it is interactive music, but this is not what I advocate for. What I do advocate for is that the music makes an impact on the experience in a way that mostly composers can think about, because this is their music. They understand the meaning they want to put inside their music, and therefore they can extend the vision of the creative director or whoever they're working with.